Welcome to the latest episode of Templar Talks. It is the second month in a row where we have a guest, which is really cool. So, yeah, welcome, Raoul. For those that I guess I'm just assuming that people are watching. People could be listening here. Raoul Zimmermann is joining us today. I don't think. Do you need? I don't know. It's one of those things. It feels really lazy to say I don't think Raoul needs an introduction, but for those that may not be as familiar with the kind of UK grindy circuit of GPs and PTs.
Also, I'm old and washed. Yeah.
Yeah, older.
I think definitely better to introduce.
Old and wise.
I used to sometimes play Magic, and now I don't play Magic anymore.
Yes. We have
I do love the game, though.
A previous PT contender, now self-referenced washed Magic player, Raoul Zimmermann, joining us today. But no, thank you very much for coming on. We've obviously done a few casts. We've done some live content, and it's great to sit down and have a bit of a chat. I always joke about how it's kind of good to talk Magic, but I'm pretty sure we've spoken about Magic before. But it's good to get it on camera and see if we can get any hot takes and,
come to some conclusions.
Cause some controversies. Who knows? Who knows what will
I do love
come
some controversy.
Yes. So I guess obviously we should probably start with why we're all sat here on a Saturday evening at 9:30. And that's because obviously you're joining us to cast an RCQ tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
I'm gonna start things off hot with the curveball. If you weren't casting, what would you be playing in this modern meta game, post Nardu, post Grief?
Yes. Well, like I said, washed. So I'm not playing very much. I am following the game pretty closely still, and yeah, I talk to people playing everywhere. And I would personally play the Jeskai scam deck, as they're now calling it, which is the Null Drifter dress down sort of deck, which has also the consign to memory.
Yes.
To counter the trigger of the Null Drifter, so you can make basically a turn 3 or 4 Null Drifter, or you can use it with Solitude and Flage, and there's all sorts of stuff going on there. Reason being, I like Consign. It seems just a quite strong card to be able to main deck.
Yeah.
It's like an insane card to play against the Eldrazi decks, which is one of the big factors in the meta game. Well, you're playing the One Ring, which is probably a good criterion for having a good deck. Flage is an amazing card, and I tend to gravitate towards those style decks. Like I said, it's a bit sort of under the radar in the sense that I think it's not really one
taken
of the main
off in a big way.
Yeah, one of the main decks of the meta game yet? Question mark. But it looks very appealing to me. I would definitely want to try that out, basically. Yeah.
I'm sure it was around week 1, and then it dipped off, and now it's come back post ban. Right.
I don't know if it's just because I'm too close to the UK metagame of what's been recently played in UK Magic Twitter, but I didn't really see much of it until Arch played it at Axiom. And I don't even think Arch spoke about it before Axiom. I think that was very much like there were maybe 2 or 3 people in the room playing that deck.
It was people who he worked with as well. As far as I think he tweeted the deck out maybe a day or 2 before the event. Sure. I seem to recall, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I know that he worked with Alex Rohan, Alex Campbell, and another person, Pip, I think, maybe.
Okay.
There was a 4th person who, sadly, I don't recall now, I'm afraid. But they were all in touch, the people who played the deck. So it came from that group. Yeah.
I do think it's very strong. I do, I hate to bring up the cesspool that is social media, but it has amused me somewhat of the outrage of the post-Nardu world. Everyone is still mad about something to do with the meta. Well, I feel, in my opinion, the One Ring, is a little, that's more justified. I can see why people have a bit of an issue with that, but it does feel at the moment there's a good control deck, there's a good combo deck, there's a good aggro deck. You kind of get to pick your flavour and go in, choose your adventure, as it were. But it still feels that people aren't happy, which is interesting. And I do get it because, energy, I think, is a, Mardu and Boros probably have to be at least 30% of the meta, which is big.
Mardu's dropped off quite a lot. I think the consensus is now Boros is the
Oh, I just mean them combined.
Yeah. But I think percentage-wise, it's not there.
It's interesting. At the mocks, I think that people played Mardu rather than Boros. But I agree with you that was sort of my observation as well, or what I thought was going on, especially since Mardu is more mid-rangey, is sort of like the idea is you have better game against the One Ring decks and things, but just by like shoving the One Ring into the Boros deck, I thought, why would you play Mardu at all? Because you get the grindy element via just playing the One Ring yourself. And also, incidentally, I think that's why the energy decks are problematic to some degree, is because you have this option, and it's one of the decks which has a very strong early game, has a sort of combo-esque element with the cat making millions of tokens with Guide of Souls, and also can grind late. So it's just very strong in all phases of the game, which, well, I think it is somewhat problematic. I think we'll see what happens, but it's certainly for me it's clearly the best deck and probably where you should start.
Yeah. Were you obviously, to go kind of off topic, were you surprised by the lack of the One Ring ban? You know, when Nardi was banned, obviously Grief got hit, which I think was a surprise for most people. Obviously it's miserable play patterns, so fair enough, but it wasn't really that popular. You know what I mean? It didn't see a lot of play.
Yeah, it was past its heyday, I would say. Yeah, you're right. With the One Ring, I think it could have gone either way. I think I wasn't particularly surprised it wasn't banned. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had been banned. Yeah.
Sure. But I think it's a few people came up with that interesting take of if it was going to be the first card to be kind of restricted to one copy.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea.
But I mean, it's thematic.
It's thematic, but there's also I would have said it's nonsense, but someone pointed out to me that the ring gets much worse if you can only play one copy. Because one of the things that's so oppressive about it is you just don't care about the downside. Just draw 7 cards and then you'll find the next ring and just cast that one. When you can only play one, I mean, you can't do that bit of the play pattern.
Yeah,
I would be worried a bit that if certain matchups just revolve around, well, I drew my copy of the One Ring, and I just have a huge advantage just because I drew my one of.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, that's the same with some sideboard cards. Yeah, you put like some strong sideboard card as a one of in your sideboard, and so perhaps that's not a huge argument. So I think it's actually kind of an interesting idea because it takes especially this problematic play pattern of not caring about the downside that's built into the card that's meant to keep it in check.
Yeah, I can't even describe the amount of frustration I have around that. Like when an opponent's on, you know, obviously I play Merfolk a lot, an opponent's on 1 life, they draw, you know, they put 8 burden counters on or whatever. It's an absurd number. They've got the world in their hand, and you stop the next ring, but they've got the 2 Force of Negations with no mana to pitch all the crap out of their hand, and you're just sat there like, oh.
I don't like the fact that you've already lost, but you have to stay watching it. It's got that counterbalance feeling where you're like, well, I know they're always going to have the right spell on top of their lot. They've already drawn 6 cards. You've already lost the game, but they haven't killed you yet. And you're like, oh, I'll stay in just to see if they somehow die to the burn encounters, and I might get that Bowmaster's ping in at the
top
right
deck my Bone Crusher Giant or whatever it is, right? Like,
you're just like, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, you're right. It is a frustrating sort of experience. It's a bit sort of just the playing against control experience to some degree. But you're right, especially because of the inbuilt damage. Like there's always a sort of chance that they break, and you're definitely feeling like you're losing for an extended period of time. It's clearly not that fun, but
it's the feels bad again. You know, the way that control can feel bad to play against. It's kind of that on steroids. I feel.
And for decks,
because it's also ubiquitous. That's I think the main problem is just you. Well, it's a colorless card. That's the problem. And that's also, I think, they said as much. The reason they didn't ban it was because they felt it was in many different strategies and it would sort of blow up the metagame to some degree. Because
what do you think about those moments, though? Because I find that quite exciting, you know, when it was really impactful sets. And I to some extent, I felt MH3 was almost too on the nose because you could see where the cards were supposed to be and what the archetype was coming in. Energy's a theme, that we're going to have an energy deck, and this card slots right into that deck. This Eldrazi goes right here, and it was almost it took the excitement away because they catered so clearly to the decks.
I mean, I didn't play during, I started playing when MH1 was already released, so I didn't see the impact of that directly. MH1. But MH2, I felt, didn't impact. It impacted the meta, but not in as wide a way as MH3 feels like it has, to me at least. But maybe that's just a fond memory of what I preferred.
I mean, it's sort of hazy because it's going back far, yeah.
Yeah.
But so I think they all did it in different ways.
Yeah.
MH1 was broken because Hogak mainly was the main culprit.
I mean, I started playing Modern, and Hogak was just what I expected. So I was like, oh, this is normal.
So I mean,
yeah,
but they basically changed the format because there was something that was hideously too good.
Yeah.
And they clearly hadn't, seen that coming. Famously, they were like, "Oh, we thought it would be a nice card for Commander."
Yeah.
I'm not sure how popular it is in Commander, but it certainly was popular in Modern for a while until it wasn't allowed to be popular anymore. So MH1 did this thing, which like shattered the format in the sense with one broken deck. I think MH2 did completely, from my recollection, change the format from my perspective to the good, because before it was like Infect and like all these super linear Infect Burn.
Dredge was even fairly playable back then, right?
Dredge was for a while very good. Phoenix was something. The exact timeline eludes me now, but for sure it was a very linear. I'm doing my thing sort of format. And Modern Horizons 2 changed that a lot because of the free interaction, as well as very strong sort of like Ragavan and Murktide as very strong, fear and aggro or fear threats essentially, which you would protect with counter magic. People would be forced to play removal because if you connect it with Ragavan, you would just run away with the game. So it changed the format entirely as far as I remember it, but in a way that was not as on the nose, like you said, as MH3, and that's I think that was a good point you made, is that it's much more directed because MH2 didn't have these sort of very clearly defined archetypes, not even in Limited, which that's a different matter. But I think it's sort of indicative. They approached Limited and Constructed the same way in MH3. They were like, okay, we're going to take this energy theme and we're going to make it so good that it's actually going to be good enough in Constructed, which was a surprise in my opinion. This one caught me off guard, that energy actually would just come out and be a great deck. The Eldrazi is less of a surprise because that used to be a deck before, right? But they gave it deliberately another soul land, which obviously got taken away at an early stage, the Ayavugin, to make that thing playable again. But you're right, like it was very targeted. They were like, we want this to be deck, we want this to be deck, we want this to be deck. And I think in Modern Horizons 2 this wasn't the case. Like they printed some good cards, and it so happened that Murktide became a deck which was good. And I'm sure other decks became good as well.
There weren't so many on the nose themes.
But it wasn't like we're going to take theme X and make it a deck in Modern.
How do you find? Because obviously I know, I think I've said it before that you're, one of the very skilled Limited players, right? You love Limited.
I love Limited, yeah.
Okay, I will put that crown on. But in terms of Limited, how have you played much MH3 Limited or?
Controversially, I hate it. I hated it, and I didn't play very much because of this. Yeah.
So we drafted. I don't think I have drafted MH3 before, and we drafted it last night. Was it last night?
Yes,
last night. Purely because Michael has won so many boxes.
Right. So you have to get
we're like, okay, we'll pay for it.
See, this is why play boosters are actually amazing, because people start to play Limited again. They have these boosters and they can actually do something with them.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, yes.
But I do actually agree with that. Like, I genuinely, I used to, a very big tangent here, but when it was set boosters and draft boosters, I always felt after F&M, when you get your prize packs, I was kind of like, well, why am I opening these? Because the EV's worse, and they're designed for a purpose. Whereas now I'm kind of like, I could open it or I could draft it. But honestly, I think all of us had a pretty miserable time.
Yeah.
I think maybe 1 in 8 enjoyed it. Maybe 2 in 8. I don't know. It felt.
I enjoyed opening 3 mythics.
Oh yeah. I mean, you hit
walking
EV.
away with money.
Yeah, but like I kind of value drafted to an extent. Like I can't remember which Eldrazi it was, but a mythic Eldrazi in pack 3, pick 1, and I just took it because I was like, I don't care. And still managed to build a deck that functioned very well, but I had no enjoyment whatsoever playing. It just felt, I don't know, everything just felt
really... It
really...
didn't feel fluid or like you'd built anything that was cohesive.
So the reason I didn't like it was because the themes are... Well, it's the same thing, like I said, in Constructed, that the themes were very... they constrict you, yeah? Like, it's energy, you do the energy thing, and you take the cards that say energy, and you put the energy cards in your deck. Yeah. To some degree, that's how they design Limited nowadays, because if you make it too open, it's very difficult for people who are new to Limited to, like, decide which cards to take. It's just sort of like information overload. You don't know what's good. You have no sort of, indication of what to do. So, to some degree, that sort of... well, you can call it on rails or whatever, but that sort of guideline is helpful. Generally, their Modern Horizon sets are meant to be... I was about to say that for a crowd who plays a lot of Limited.
Yeah, a new player, you wouldn't expect to be buying the expensive set.
They advertise them as like an interesting draft experience, and like I said, controversially, I didn't like MH3 at all for this reason. Energy was one thing. I mean, Eldrazi colorless Eldrazi thing sort of was also insular. There's the draw 3 stuff in blue-black, which is a bit less constraining, but also like there's lots of cards which literally say this thing. And I found that a bit inelegant, and also it made you inflexible in drafting. And what I enjoy about drafting is that you kind of try and make things work, or like, and in a way where the cards are not telling you already what you're meant to do. An additional point that one of my friends made was that all of the, or many of the multicolor commons rather, are 2-drops, which also disincentivizes you from making like more colored decks, because like splashing a 2-drop is kind of bad, because whatever the 2-drop is on turns 5 or 6, it's not going to be as impactful. So the mana, even if the mana is good, like you kind of want to stick to 2 colors So basically there's no incentive to sort of branch out, because there's not powerful multicolor cards that you're going to readily have access to.
Ironically as well, I think the land cycle was really good for branching out, right, in terms of the
that's kind of the idea, right. They wanted this sort of, they tend to do that with like these sort of 3-color groups which sort of do the same thing, like Abzan counters, Jeskai energy in this format, and like Temur Eldrazi, so that you can sort of do mix and match these colors in some way. So that's the sort of way they wanted it to do, but in my opinion it just doesn't work very well in this case. What was
it they did in it was one of the recent master sets? There was a card where you got to circle a color or something. In addition,
Cryptic Spires, that's Double Masters 20.
Was that you could pick any 2 colors on it?
So you pick the card during the draft, and then at the end in deck building you decide which 2 colors the card will make.
I did like that system.
That was interesting.
So in terms of Limited, what are there any drafts? Are there any sets that have released recently that you've enjoyed drafting?
Yeah, I really liked OTJ, as in on Thunder Junction. I really, really enjoyed that one. I played it loads. Reason being, you had sort of same as with Constructed again, that you had all macro archetypes represented. You could actually draft control decks. There was a Grixis sort of crime. The crime was the theme, so like targeting their stuff. You could draft really long game decks which would play removal spells and win, eventually just grind out huge advantage with mostly card advantage engines. There was a very good aggro deck, which was considered the best deck in the format, was like green-white mounts. So you could do that thing. There were some like nice card interactions, card combos that worked well together. Sort of more mid-rangey was a white-black deck, which had one of the uncommon was key for it, was a 3-mana 3/2, which you could sacrifice. I want to say creature, and then kill a non-land permanent of theirs. And there was lots of reanimation and ways to buy this guy back. So you would just make that guy, sack it somehow, get it back, and like the whole deck was revolving around like looping this guy. which made for interesting decks. And because it was a very powerful set, the rares were very strong, but the removal was plentiful enough and powerful enough to keep that in check in my mind. So sometimes obviously if you didn't have the removal spell, they played their bomb, you lose. But because the removal was strong enough, that didn't happen as much as if you prioritized removal, which also was something that wasn't important for a long time. I'm nerding out a lot about limited here. But it was a set where it was very important to pick removal spells, which hadn't been to the case for a long time, because the creatures always tended to be sort of the same.
Yeah.
They tended to be kind of good, but now there were these huge bombs which you just had to kill.
Yeah. So you have to keep that in mind.
It also makes that you have to keep that in mind while drafting, while playing. Keep your removal for their powerful thing. Try to deal with their normal things differently. I think that makes for interesting gameplay.
See, I've heard a lot of complaints about the newer sets with those. The big score slot, or not the big slot, the breaking news slot.
Yeah.
Or what was the one before? Multiverse Legends or something. Whatever, you can open a Ragavan and run away with a draft. Whatever that slot is called. I've heard a lot of complaints about it just because it feels like it adds an element of lottery, and that if you do hit one of those, supplement slot bombs, then...
I mean, ironically, I think in Thunder Junction, it was so many of those cards that it kind of balanced out again. Yeah, actually, it was kind of weird to say, but the decks were powerful on average because there were 3 extra sheets. There was the breaking news ones. There was also this big score thing, and there was some special guests as well, I think. But the point was, there were just tons of good cards that you would. A deck would on average contain
I think the complaints I remember were pretty much the Ragavan ones of if someone happened to get the Ragavan, it just puts you so...
Yeah, I mean, that's also... There can be cards like that, but yeah.
I heard really good things about OTJ Draft. It was one of the ones that was the most popular in recent times at the local store, right, at Athena.
Yeah.
People wanted to go and play it, and that's a rarity. And I don't like limited at all, so... Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about Bloomburrow, and the new set's already out.
It's about to be out. Yeah, actually, we did a draft yesterday.
Yeah, how was Dustmore?
I went 0-3.
Nice.
With my deck. Felt not so great.
Yeah.
Speaking of knowing things about limited, right? It's a bit too early to tell. I had a very run-of-the-mill sort of red-green creatures deck, and it didn't work at all. Which, that's I guess an interesting sort of point. I'm not sure. Obviously, a very very low sample size. You can't really take too many conclusions. But the other players, they were doing something more interesting than just playing some creatures with some removal spells, and were having success with that, which for now seems promising. For example, there was a blue-white deck at the table, which there's the Signpost Uncommon is a 2-mana 2/2, and whenever you make an enchantment or fully unlock a room, whatever, you make a 1/1 creature token. And there's a card which it's an enchantment, such a room costs 2 mana, makes a 1/1 enchantment creature. So they played that, and then they played the uncommon first, and then that thing, and then they made 3 tokens that turn. So suddenly they do 3 1/1s, and that was just I was immediately so behind on board that they kept on doing their stuff, and it was just dead. Yeah.
In theory, I think I should enjoy limited for that reason that you're talking about, which is the kind of, and it's what I find is missing from constructed now, which is that kind of solving things and working things out in the game. And I think previously, because standard fed so strongly into modern, being the most played format that we play, you'd get that a set's coming out, I'm solving it, there's going to be cards that are relevant in modern, and I find that this introduction of these Horizon sets has essentially made a majority of any impact from standard obsolete.
Yeah, there is very
the next
limited.
big thing is coming, and it's not, you're very rarely going to see, I think
did anything from Bloomburrow see play in modern? There was that blue card
thing,
no, the bird, the
Mockingbird, but that wasn't even good.
But I'm trying to think of anything.
I used to scour the new sets, looking for what is going to be good in what might make its way into modern. And I think like the most recent one you could say is maybe that Assassin's Creed card, but again it's from a supplementary set.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. I find that like,
I think that's
something's made it in.
Yeah. I think that's kind of also Wizards' strategy, whether overt or not so overt. But essentially, like, standard isn't feeding into modern in that way anymore. But that's also out of necessity, because modern is so big now. The cards would have to be like extremely powerful to make an impact, which would
the real
make standard problematic.
I don't know. It's because it's boring, but I think the reason I get so down on it is because the thing that always impacts is lands. And lands are boring, right? Like the surveil lands, they're an interesting concept.
Not for amulet players. They're having a whale of a time.
For a chase card in a standard set that you're going to put in your modern deck to be a land.
Yeah.
It's kind of a feels bad, right?
Oh,
like
I see it this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas I think those are the sets, like when I forget which set, was it Carl of Mana, the surveil lands?
Yeah.
But when they released, it was a no-brainer. Like, these will see play. These are
there was some
good
discussion about it on Twitter beforehand.
I did see that.
Whether you want to play the Murktide at the time or something, and then people realized these are quite good.
Okay, yeah,
but like you're right. I mean, obviously they were for sure something that
was
immediately jumped out as something that could be very good. Could be very good because fetchable.
But it is just like effect. When there's a flashy.
But obviously it's not so flashy.
When there's a flashy cool mythic, that's exciting. Whereas when the chase cards are rare lands. It's a bit
it's this power level thing. If for there to be a flashy card that adds to modern, it would be
like Sheldred, for example, which didn't even really add to modern that much.
Would have to be like extremely powerful and probably imbalanced standard at that point.
I miss the days though where it was like uncommon young pyromancer that was relevant, and you're like, this is a whole archetype
young
built
pyromancer
around it.
Still
and now it's like
sees play maybe
every card is just something from Modern Horizons that is rare or above. And you're just like, every card's rare.
I think their idea is that Pioneer is meant to be that format where the standard cards slot into. The problem is Pioneer is just not particularly popular.
I hate the way. I don't know if I've ever actually had a conversation with you about this, Raoul. I rant about this a lot, but I despise that WotC have 3 formats. It really annoys me because every other game that has maintained, like, I just to use Pokemon as the best example for it, they have extended and it has no support and no one cares and no one plays it. Their format is standard and everyone plays standard and the World Championships are standard. And the fact that they've split their player base over 3 formats is just like, even on a local level, you see the problems with it because
there's inconsistencies. In the we know who's gonna rock up for the modern season and who's gonna slide away when it's standard.
So difficult. The fact that the seasons are now set as standard, Pioneer, Modern, rotating the comp seasons. That's kind of good that you play a modern tournament to feed into a modern tournament. That's useful, but equally it just absolutely divides the player base because which for stores, I know locally Pioneer, I think we had maybe like 2 because the stores just didn't believe that it was going to sell enough tickets, whereas Modern, I think we've got like 9 because they believe in it. And I think it's sad to see that.
I think it's maybe a remnant of when they had a larger player base for competitive, for the non-commander formats, let's say. And I don't know how much COVID sort of destroyed a lot there. I mean, certainly it had a huge impact on in paper play, but it seemed to me the community was much larger before COVID and shrunk down extremely after. And this having more formats would mean if the community is bigger, then everyone can play the format they like, and it's fine. You get 8 people for 8 people for Pioneer, 16 for Modern, 8 for Standard, and then everyone can play. But if it's 2, 2, and 8, then obviously 4 people don't play.
I think
that's part of what's going on there.
I come from, for context for anyone that isn't aware listening, I started playing Magic effectively at COVID, so my lens is fully the post-COVID world. So that's why I've always been super passionate about I've had so many discussions with our local stores of just like, please can we just play one format each week and unite the player base, because we're splitting a small amount of people over a variety of formats. And I understand that won't make everyone happy, but I think it's like, it's very hot fuzz for the greater good almost. Like you need to unite player bases to keep the game alive, which is, crucial, really.
Yeah. I mean, Modern seems to be the format I think that most people most gravitate to for some reason.
Why do you think Pioneer... I mean, we obviously have identified ourselves that it's unpopular and have our own opinions. Why do you think it's not a popular format?
Actually, don't really know. For a while, I thought the games were just absolutely boring. As in, when it was Mono Green with Karn, Phoenix, and Red Black. I didn't enjoy the gameplay personally. I don't know. It seemed very much. Well, the Karn deck was very samey. Obviously, the goal of the deck was to do the same thing over and over, which is that's kind of fine. But I've actually struggled to place why I didn't really enjoy. Phoenix is also actually like that. You also do the same thing over and over.
I really didn't like Phoenix. I picked it up and just didn't enjoy that it was so. I'll cycle through my deck some more and reanimate these and do it again.
So, but that was why I didn't like it. As to why it's not popular in general, it's hard for me to say. I actually don't. What did you guys think?
I've landed on it being it was. I don't know if it is now. It's transformed a little bit, but it was the rock paper scissors for me. It felt like there was no. This deck beat that deck, that beat that deck, and you're done.
As in, there was not enough play, isn't like the matchups were too skewed.
Yeah, and there wasn't much agency. I felt that if you got behind, that was it. It was again the similar.
I think this I agree with the last bit. Yeah, for sure. Where the games never swung from I'm losing to maybe I have a chance, I can come back and I can win. And obviously that is an important element.
I guess in some ways that could be a good thing for some players. You know what I mean? Like if you're from the chess world and you want to know that you're winning a game, I guess that's a good thing. And there's less luck in it and less variance from the swings. But I don't know. I think for me, and my super hot take on it is I genuinely think they created it as a format to try and appease people that didn't like the new Modern. And I think that side of the community where a lot of it was lost over the COVID period in terms of the old Modern players have already left. So we've got this weird format where standard's a 3-year rotating format. How many people are keeping their cards for Pioneer, which is what it was supposed to serve, and now it's in this really weird spot, especially now they've got what's it called? Is it Foundations or something?
Coming up, the new core set for
which a non-rotating core set, which is cool in principle, but I think they're almost proving the point of kind of like making this weird in the middle format less and less relevant by doing these things. I don't know.
It's interesting. It did come out of nowhere, the Pioneer. It was interesting for a while. It actually did change quite a lot. Like when it at its inception, it was it had Uro and Underworld Breach, and it was quite combo.
See, I just never. I refused to play it because I bought into Modern, and then literally I think it was 1 to 2 weeks later they announced Pioneer, and I was like, "Fuck this! I've just spent money on a Modern deck. I could have saved so much by buying into this new format. I'm just not going to touch it." So I didn't play it for a year.
The other thing about it is clearly also tournament support, but that's the same thing that Standard is suffering from. Is that Modern was kind of the only remnant. Standard is being played on Arena. Pioneer was sort of new, and there wasn't much you could play. There's not much reason to play it.
I think Challenger decks help. I like that about Pioneer.
Yeah, the mono red one was good.
Not even the mono. One of them was like fairly close to the actual deck.
It was the mono blue one, right?
No, Lotus Field. The Lotus Field one was fairly close to.
They also had a Phoenix one, right?
But I'm
not sure
how
the
one
list
Phoenix.
I think
okay.
I think it might have had to, but like it was like. Yeah. Really, you had your leg cut off, kind of. Whereas Lotus Field, I'm pretty sure was 4 Lotus Fields.
Not that I want to see more Lotus Fields.
No, but like, I
really
wish they would.
That.
I'm just going to jump into it. We've got it noted down to talk about later in terms of things that could improve new player onboarding, improve
Sure.
experience. I think, the modern event deck, as it were, which is before my time but was still sat on shelves, it was a badly designed product. It didn't make sense. I bought them to flip the Sword of Feast and Famine and buy other stuff that was worth more. But like it was a cool
idea is good. Yeah. They're just not willing to ever do it in a way. Well, in Pioneer being the exception with these decks, but generally they seem to not be willing to do it in a way where it actually gives you enough of a basis.
I think there's enough decks.
Flesh and Blood do it really well, I think.
Flesh and Blood do it very well. Flesh and Blood. Well, I say that the legendaries are a problem there, and they'll never print them in supplementary products.
I think the game has I really like Pauper Flesh and Blood because you get a real taste of the game, whereas I think it's difficult to emulate the comp Magic in a low-level product because it's such a complex game. So they don't print cards that are complex necessarily, or they print one of them and then it's really hard to
controversially though, like Commander's the big thing. I actually think Commander as a new player product is probably more complicated than like Standard, because the card pool's huge and you can have so many shenanigans that cards that enable each other to do really silly things.
But it's also just not the same game. Like that's how I see it. Like Commander is a board game, and Magic the Gathering competitive or these formats are just a way different experience.
It's
way
low
different
stakes, I think.
Yeah.
Like Commander's low stakes, right? You sit down, play casually. Your friend does something busted. You do something busted, and you might not really even understand how you can interact with it, but you feel like you've had fun. Whereas
you did a thing.
Yeah.
But I think just the core experience is different. The reason you play Commander is you sit 4 people together, you have a good time, you do something on the table just so that you like actually came together. And I think that's like
I think that's,
not wanting to be disparaging. I think that's the core idea, isn't it? The social thing much more.
That's it. I think but I think
Magic.
I think my Commander experience was skewed because I played intro decks and then I bought a set of the 4 Commander decks, and effectively me and 3 friends played to win and power crept each other into buying more powerful cards because everyone wanted to win, which then translated to, what's this thing called Modern? That sounds exactly what I'm trying to do. So I transitioned into that, which that's not... I have learnt since then, having played Commander with lots of other people, that my approach to Commander is not necessarily everyone else's. I would rather play CDH
Have you been
or
ostracised from the local Commander community?
Oh, honestly, like the amount of times I have played Commander with strangers and seen people like almost flip the table because someone used a combo, and I'm just sat there like, I'm really glad you used that combo because now we can go again. Like someone's won, let's shuffle up and play. Like
right, but that kind of I think reinforces my point to a degree, is that what you were looking for was not actually the Commander experience, as I would call it. But I'm not sure how we got here with the intro packs. Yeah. One point I did want to make actually is that, obviously coming back to limited, is that I think the intro products are a lot more like limited gameplay, which is actually quite interesting, especially on Arena. They have these decks for new players. They're like 2-color decks you can play. You just get them for free, and I quite enjoy playing them just to like do quests sometimes. Like I don't want to like spend money on a draft or whatever. I just play one game of these, and they're based around sort of like the limited archetypes of the most recent set, and they generate creature combat and these sort of like limited gameplay. So it's interesting that that's kind of the on-ramp to learn how the game works. You could actually do via that. Obviously drafting itself is quite complicated, but if you give somebody like also Jumpstart is sort of similar. Like the games that resemble limited games much more than constructed games. It
would be interesting if WotC were to give those kind of products to stores in paper, so that they could, even if it was to lend to new players. I think they've like sort of flirted
with it. There are welcome decks and these things, but I'm obviously like not.
I don't think welcome decks exist anymore.
Oh, okay.
I might be wrong, but I think it's now a welcome booster, which is just 15 cards and like.
No, what you really want, I think you're right, is exactly this sort of thing where you get like some sort of something that's kind of functioning but quite simple, and you start playing.
Well, we discussed it. I mean, obviously, Axion have done it really well because they went into schools and provided an experience that fed into their store and fed into their their kind of what they want to do as a company. And I've said to our local store on multiple occasions, can we emulate something similar, because we know the 35 to 40 players who are coming for the last 5 years, but nobody new is turning up. And I think for me that's really sad, because
I think then to kind of segue into another topic in terms of how do we see the future of Magic, is the reason that this isn't happening is because stores are seeing, their bread and butter can go in multiple. Magic the Gathering success isn't necessarily their success, right? It doesn't necessarily pay their bills. If they're seeing more success with other games and more income with other games, they're going to go that way. And is it just that it doesn't matter that we're not onboarding more Magic players because people are just flocking to other games? I mean, I know we were chatting in the car, a lot of the old Axion grinders are playing Flesh and Blood a lot. I mean, I've been... I am very much, my Twitter feed is all Magic, and I've been getting all updates on the Lorcana tournament this weekend from all my, Magic players I know. I think Matt Brown was doing good.
He's doing lots of Lorcana.
Is the case that Magic is slowly going to just erode itself into Commander as a casual game?
I mean, Wizards will want to prevent that. I think,
but
you would think that this is going to become a problem for them. I mean, agree with you that lots of other games are doing a better job of sort of taking away. Well, Magic was the only game that was doing loads of different things at once for a long time, and now games are sort of taking spaces away from them. Like Flesh and Blood is taking the sort of tournament grinder people away from Magic. Lorcana, I suppose, like the sort of casual
I'm just going to
two-player players.
Really
Sorry,
I do not get. Oh, I'm actually just going to make sure that this is still recording. It is. Sorry, guys. Sorry, my lock screen just went on. I panicked. But I don't understand Lorcana in that a lot of the grinders I see are also playing Lorcana, but I don't get what the fuck is going on with their... I won one game and lost one game, so I drew that round. I'm like, what? Why are you not just doing... I don't know the
system either. Yeah,
I think Lorcana is best of two, which to me is like, what?
Yeah, I've read it somewhere, but I don't know the specifics. But it's not.
You just play two games
to what Magic is. It's very different. But then I don't know what Flesh and Blood is. That best of three.
Flesh and Blood is one game.
Is best of one. Yeah.
So they're obviously very different.
Yeah. This tournament structures are all different, but sort of like the people. Well, yes, the target audiences they want to steal from Magic. Well, they're relatively clearly defined. For Flesh and Blood, at least, it's very clear. It's the tournament grinders, and they do a good job of taking care of them. In air quotes, yeah. Like they are providing what Magic used to provide.
Yes.
Lorcana, it's a bit more diverse, I suppose, but I mean, I think they're targeting young people clearly, and so happen to catch also the Giga grinders because the game is very similar, and they're just going to crush everyone, especially if it's a more casual audience. So like people who are after value, obviously you should go and play Lorcana, presumably. Although now this tournament had like 2,000 people, so maybe it's starting to already the events are becoming too big already for that to really be a thing. But like very clearly, they're having success, and I mean either Wizards says that's fine, we have Commander as our thing, and that's kind of what we're just going to boil down to, and that's going to be our it's already their core target audience. It's maybe they would be fine saying it's just that.
Yeah, I just think like their revenue wise, since Commander has become the focus, their share value is going up, their sales are going up. When you talk to, I don't think you need to be in the know to see that the creators and sponsorships that get pushed around are very much Commander focused. For those that are covering that kind of a content. And equally as well, I think it's evident that again, you don't really need to be in the know. The fact that the comp events at Axion have travelled around the UK to smaller venues at LGS's, but Command Fest is always at one of the biggest venues you could do it in the UK. I think it's evident where the player base is. So I don't know. Maybe I'm being pessimistic, but maybe that is enough for WotC.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to predict. I'm not really sure. I think the instinct of the people making the game is a different one, actually. Because the people who are making the game are loads of people who used to be on the Pro Tour.
Super passionate about Magic.
People, some of them literally have been there since day one, more or less. And it's all, yes, people who are very passionate about Magic. And a lot of the people high up in the structure are simply competitive tournament players. And and I suspect that they want sort of passion. It's a matter of heart, not so much money or whatever. It just happens to be the framework that they're forced into. So as long as those people carry on making the game, I think they want to try and have it
players
working. Perhaps obviously I have no idea how the company works itself, but working perhaps against what they're being told they should focus on. I mean, they do have casual play design now, and like Melissa DeTora, I think, leads it. But also she was a Pro Tour. She top eight a Pro Tour, so like it's not like she's the casual expert. So Wizard seems to have lots of people who maybe like the casual space, but also have a very strong background in the tournament thing. So I think the makers of the game want to keep that scene alive. Whether that's enough in the long run, I don't know.
I think it's Lorcano. I think has been the one that's made me think more about it, because and equally as well, I don't talk about the game at all because I have no interest in it. But One Piece, I think, is also making fairly
with young
big
people
waves
as well,
and you kind of see the successes of those games. Flesh and Blood was always a bit more niche because it was very adult themed, almost not in like a weird way, but in terms of like the cards were more grotesque. There was more gore. It was
it's very, that one's extremely focused.
I like the complexity. If Flesh and Blood was a community that was available to me post-COVID, because I'd sold out Magic over lockdown. If that had been a game that was being played at the local store, I don't think I ever would have come back to Magic.
I think it still gets played in slightly further afield stores. I know it's popular in like Lowestoft and Ipswich, but it's like
still about accessibility, right?
Yeah,
and I think
that's the same problem I have. Like I've been sort of flirting with getting into it, mostly because I know some people who are doing very well in it, and I just miss hanging out with them, as is often the case. But for me, it's a ton about community, and there is just nowhere for me to play it, and I'm not going to. It's too much of an effort if I don't have some at least one person who is passionate learning the game or wants to teach the game or something in a sort of face-to-face capacity.
It's a very fun game. I like it.
It is.
It tickles the itch.
I missed playing it a lot. But like, so obviously, with Flesh and Blood, you kind of flirting with the idea of looking into the competitive side of that. Obviously, you haven't played too much Comp Magic recently. How have you found kind of the adjustment to the other avenues of Magic? Like, I think you judged an event or two, and you've done some casting. You've done. How have you found it, or what have kind of been the highlights, I guess, as it were?
Badly in some way, as in whenever I go to one of the events, I realize how much I miss it.
What was the last event you played? Was it the
Axion Invitational?
Oh, the Invitational, but because you won. I remember you won the Megamon and then caught a flight, right?
I caught a flight? Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you won a Megamon and then you were flying to the PT.
Oh, yeah. It was the weekend. Yeah, it was the weekend before Pro Tour or something.
And that was when you went to the Invitational.
So Pro Tour Minneapolis was Minneapolis, I want to say. Yeah, it was sometime during the year. And the last event I played competitively was the Invitational, which was November last year. So reaching about a year ago. Yeah. I can still play like small local stuff, but again, there's not much in Cambridge. Same problem. I'm actually about to head to Tokyo, so there I can actually play because there's a big enough player base. Exactly. I can actually go and play things. Now I need a deck again. But to get back to the question, I miss playing, and I want to find a way to make that possible. I think judging is fun. It's a completely different way of engaging with it. The thing I judged was a two-headed giant mystery booster sealed thing in London. Yes. Yeah. I judged a bit like very long ago, like 6, 7, 8 years ago. I don't even know. So I had some experience. This was completely wild because the interactions were like off the charts. There were these playtest cards, which obviously aren't real Magic cards even, and there is rulings for like Wizards did publish rulings for them. So a lot of it was crazy.
It feels like you kind of got thrown in the deep end. There,
to some degree, yes. On the other hand, like obviously, since it was a casual format, I think was the reasoning behind it. I would find it interesting to judge in a competitive space because I mean that's where I grew up, literally, and where the questions that arise there are interesting to me and helping solve the issues that arise in that sort of scenario. And also, I mean, obviously, as a player, I've had loads of situations. I think it's something I sort of naturally have an understanding of how the players think, and maybe that's something that...
I'm going to maybe go for a bit of a hot take, actually, that just came to me. How, in terms of, like, obviously you've said, the environment you grew up in, you've experienced these kind of judging calls. How actively do you think judges are involved with watching and interacting with Comp Magic? Because I remember, and I'm not going to call out which tournament it was and which judges it was and when it happened, but I guess it's pretty obvious because it was shortly after the Pro Tour with the controversy around the One Ring announcement about protection. There was a 25-minute judge call because the judge sided the wrong way, and the player was like, I just watched the PT. I don't think it works that way. I don't have to announce that I have protection.
I see. As in like an edit event after the PT.
So it kind of made me think like, how around it are or is it very much like a very like a process thing where you take each card? Because I've noticed that a lot of the time when I've had judge calls, judges do very much read cards very literally, and like it's not I know that interaction. It's very much process things step by step.
I think it depends. Obviously, it depends on the judge.
Yeah,
and it used to be because that was where a lot of the judges, the sphere that they were working in air quotes. I think there used to be much more awareness of this stuff when Grand Prix existed. There were tons of judges at Grand Prix. They did their judge conferences.
Yeah.
Or some judge meetings there and things. And the way I got accredited as a judge, like I said, was at a GP. I did the test somewhere like on the side. So when a lot of the judging you do is around the competitive circles, I think you're going to be much more aware of it. Since that's dropped off, I would guess that's less. I mean, again, I don't want to speak for anyone there. I don't really know, but I know a few judges who definitely follow it. I suspect other judges follow it less.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's interesting in Magic because Magic is kind of also the OG judge game, as in like where there was an officially sanctioned judge community. This is all falling off as well, which I think is bad. But a lot of these newer games, like Lorcana, I think Flesh and Blood as well, they have Magic judges. And there I highly doubt, because these games are new, that they have played huge amounts of the game, know the game in and out as much as they would Magic over the time. So I wonder how many, that made me then think, like circle back and think how many people approached judging Magic in the same way that these Magic judges are approaching these other games, where they can work out the interactions by looking at the cards and stuff, but don't actually have the things already, the answers ready because they've seen it X times before.
No, I don't know. Like that is interesting because I think it is as well. I guess maybe if you're a judge that is rotating between different games, you are going to be less incentivized to like focus on one. If you're actually getting paid to do these and it's some supplementary income at the weekend, you're going to want to go to where the tournaments are, right? So like,
and again, I think that especially Lorcana will put much more money into it. Because like they're like, I mean, Disney, they just
the Walt Disney money for sure.
Did you have to do refresher training?
I didn't. I mean, now I think the thing is like now you don't need to have anything to be a judge. Like this is this is a problem to some degree, but
it's why you.
But I think that's the reason they didn't put me in the competitive one, because Axion's judge community is run by the old guard, let's say. So they have a clear idea that they want people
and you know that they're the old guard as well, because they have the historical actual judge
shirts
uniforms.
It is a tragedy that the original program transferred to the Judge Academy, and then that just slowly died a death. Because there was such reverence, and the people who were judges, especially in the Athena community, who'd worked hard and made their way to level 3 or whatever, it was like, know your business.
I mean, it's the same thing as the like prot points stuff for players. Like the fact that there was a structure, there was a level, there was like targets you could work towards and attain, or like hope to attain. I think it's so important for putting effort and
I really like that about Pokemon, because Pokemon still does it. Like you can play very small local tournaments and get
I think it's a tragedy,
small amount of points.
It's a tragedy that they completely got rid of it, because it was such an aspirational thing for people to work
DCI went. Like, I still have my card.
I think I just about got
I knew my number, man.
But it was the point that I think Benton mentioned it last podcast actually, about how as well it's the easiest way to get on the PT is already be on the PT, because you know what I mean, like there's so many qualifier
that's always
events
been the case
weekend.
to sort of a degree, but like now
but I kind of feel like you could see the relief when Ben re-queued after not queuing. You can see in the emotional relief of that how difficult it is to then get back on the horse if you've fallen off the horse, and like
that's for sure. I mean, that's actually
crazy.
Around the time with like the Invitational was sort of my last tournament for different reasons, but it was also my last chance to queue for the PT. And the prospect of then going, okay, I have to literally start from nothing, like is it's daunting, and you know that it's very hard. I was fortunate that I actually managed after COVID. I already thought the one before was going to be my last one, and probably but it just happened that I got lucky at Naples, and managed to go and there one more time. But then coming to nothing. I agree that like especially if you're used to being there, like it's not like I've played a few, but I was never chaining them. But if you're like Benton or something, or like appetite, even I mean Autumn as well. She used to be at every Pro Tour, and she's just got fallen off to nothing. And there's so many people. Nathan Stoyer is like the most famous example. He was world champion. A year later, he has to start playing RCQs.
It is. I think that was it is a funny. Well, it's not funny. It is a tragedy that is the once you've fallen off the rung, you're all the way back to that bottom. But I think as well a few of the last RCs. I think the Pro Tour slots were cut massively, some of the requalification stuff was cut from the European ones. The
requalification to the RC, you mean?
Was it I can't remember. Something got cut.
Certainly the Pro Tour slots got cut, but that was announced at the beginning already, because they needed to. Well, their reasoning was they needed to populate the system after COVID, so they had 2 or 3 seasons with extra slots. But they had already then said it will go down after, and then I think they actually did add some more again because it was so popular. But I mean, I think the biggest problem is that you, without ever getting to the Pro Tour, there's nothing that can get you there, or like over a longer period of time. Like these pro points or stuff like this was.
I think it is. I think it's good that you have to go down, because I think. You want the experience to be had by more players, right? I think it's important that more people, experience the Pro Tour than there is.
Sure. It's not an elite.
This for sure.
Set.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
and so I think that's important that those slots are available and that people have to go. But I think the route from the bottom to the top is lacking in a lot of opportunity or structure.
The point system would be great because, like straight up, Axiom doing that, I think was.
I agree.
Really
the
good.
leaderboard was fantastic.
The leaderboard was
and
great.
For engagement as well. Like
there was so much chatter about this.
Fucking Michael drove to Stockton like an unhinged lunatic, and I was like, no, I'm not driving there because that's crazy.
And
but
even if it doesn't translate into action like it did there, I mean, clearly it actually does translate into action. That's an example of it. Yeah. But even if it doesn't, it was a topic that people were like really caring about, and this is like you need to get people to care, and this sort of thing gets people to care, even if it's completely unrealistic for them to achieve it. Like, I mean,
where was the last Sheffield was like everyone was
calculating
their points and have their spreadsheet.
It was constantly every round.
A spreadsheet.
I spoke to 3 different players who had 3 different spreadsheets with their friends that they'd been putting together to track it. So.
And that's fantastic. Like this type of thing it's just great, and like seeing it on the small level is great. Yeah,
it definitely is. But I think we'll probably call it there because I'm conscious that we have to get up very early tomorrow to go and cast an RCQ.
Speaking of casting, though. That's actually the thing I want to do because that's always so fun. Like, I mean, there's not that many opportunities for it, but I mean, that's why I'm here.
Honestly,
you're on your casting grind.
But this is what I really like. I love watching the game. I love like trying to work out what people are thinking. And this is what I'm honestly not hugely enthusiastic.
Not saying
about,
it just because you're here, but I genuinely really like your cast, and I've enjoyed when we've casted as well. I think you're great at it, and it is. I hope you get more opportunities beyond, but you will always always have a welcome chair.
We can say that we were Raoul's grassroots casting.
I mean, there's much.
Discovered
it's
unknown
also, like,
magic player. Raoul
so much
Zimmermann.
to learn. I did one bit of casting without wanting to extend it too much, but it was. So there's this guy on Twitter, the MTG Elo guy. Adam is his name. Yeah. So he always casts the Japanese RC.
Sure.
And he normally does it with Andrew Ellenbogen, who is like, he was the longest reigning Pro Tour champion because he won the last Pro Tour before they changed it to MPL. Yeah. But one time the US RC was at the same time, so he asked on Twitter whether people wanted to cast with him.
Okay.
And I said, yeah. But because it's Japan time, it was like actually, I got up at like, well, I casted through the night.
Yeah.
And we did one day of that, and that was fantastic. It was great. Andrew Ellenbogen actually ended up joining later because he basically got off the flight, went home, and joined the broadcast in like round 4 or 5 or something of the day, or maybe even earlier. And yeah, it's just so much fun.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Casting is a blast. I think, I think it really good. Casters as well, I think, really shine through. I've noticed watching, coverage, you really get to know the casters that you appreciate very quickly by voice. And I think this isn't even just in Magic. Like, I watch, League of Legends esports, and personally, I always gravitate towards the American game, which is the lowest skilled League of Legends, but they have some of, in my opinion, the best casters. So you gravitate towards those games. So it is I'm glad you're looking to get more into it.
I miss the SCG tour.
Who cast the SCG tour? Because I'm
Cedric Phillips and Patrick Sullivan.
Cedric Phillips. Is
Cedric
great.
Phillips' voice just is like gold dust. When I'm like, this is going to be a good day. That's going to be on in the background. There's going to
they had some hits for that.
Well.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
like some of his takes on social media are just really funny.
He's
as well.
An opinionated man.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
But
greatly.
The production value of the SCG tour was always so nothing has emulated it since, really, to that level. Suited and booted, the booth, the quality of the stream, 10 out of 10.
But I think that's what's
and
funny,
also the
to
focus
me.
On competitive.
Yeah.
And they had leaderboards, didn't they? Like, you could really track your heroes as such.
I've always found, for me, with Magic content in general, I shouldn't admit that I still like them, but I love the really low quality content and the really high quality. So I love alpha investments just dude ranting with a camera that's out of focus and pointed in the wrong direction while spinning on an office chair. But equally, I love the really high production value.
Yeah.
Like, even though I don't like Commander particularly, like game nights is. They know how to make a show.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah.
Post Malone brought a bit like I actually watched Commander content purely because of him as well.
Well, yeah, Post Malone went on that, which is crazy.
Just because they did loads of like no ban list stuff.
Yeah.
Why are you playing this? Because I own it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna play it.
I'm surprised, as much as I know Post Malone is probably a very busy man. I'm very surprised they haven't appeared on a Magic channel since purchasing the One Ring, just as like
maybe he's recording the new album. Who knows?
Well,
he's in his country season, isn't he?
Who knows?
He's doing country music.
Yes. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for joining us, Raoul. We're gonna go refresh, and we won't see the audience on the broadcast tomorrow because that will have happened before this goes out. But hopefully you watched it and hopefully it was good.
Yes,
who knows?
Hopefully it was good.
Hopefully we had some interesting decks. But thank you very much for listening and watching.
Interesting decks and interesting games. Yes.
We will see you next month.
Yes, thank you very much. Bye. Thank you.